Hey guys, Breezy CPA here, your certified public accountant, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the blueprints for the ISC section of the CPA exam, the Information Systems and Controls section. By the end of this video, you should understand the concepts that you're familiar with and the ones that you're going to need to work on before you go and sit for the exam. Let's get into it. If you're interested in studying for the CPA exam or you just want to learn more about accounting, make sure to visit us at breezycpa.com to check out our library of courses. We offer a free trial membership as well as an affordable monthly membership for all of our students. Our library of courses covers all sections of the CPA exam based on the CPA exam blueprints. The courses feature video lessons, downloadable PDF study guides, cram courses, multiple choice questions, 5,000 of them within a test bank, real-world simulations, and final exam simulations to prepare you for the exam on exam day. So whatever section you're studying for, go to breezycpa.com, use promo code BREEZY20 to get 20% off your membership. So the CPA exam is comprised of 3 core exam sections and 1 discipline exam section. The Uniform CPA exam is designed according to the exam blueprints, which we're looking at now. The core exam sections assess the knowledge and skills that a newly licensed CPA needs in their role to protect the public interest, while the discipline exam sections assess the knowledge and the skills in the respective discipline domains applicable to CPA candidates in their role to protect the public interest. The 3 core exam sections are each 4 hours long. They include audit, financial accounting and reporting, FAR, and reg, taxation and regulation. And the 3 discipline exam sections are also 4 hours long, and they include BAR, BEC, Information Systems and Controls, ISC, which we're going to be looking at now, and Tax Compliance and Planning, TCP. So each of these exam sections is 4 hours long, as you can see here, and they have different varying amounts of multiple choice questions. So you can see that for audit, there's 78, for FAR, there's 50, for ISC, there's 82 multiple choice questions. So this is the most multiple choice questions that you're going to be getting on any of the 6 exams. The 3 core exams are the ones that you have to take, so Aud, FAR, and Reg, and you can choose one of the discipline exams, BAR, ISC, or TCP. If you choose ISC, it's going to have the most multiple choice questions, but it's going to have the least task-based simulations. So we can see here for task-based simulations, Aud has 7, FAR has 7, and ISC has the fewest at 6. Now, when it comes to weighting of the score, the multiple choice questions are generally 50% of your score, and the task-based simulations are the other 50% of your score. However, in the case of ISC, because it has more multiple choice questions than any of the other exams, the multiple choice is 60% of your score, while the task-based simulations are going to be 40% of your score. So that's the difference between ISC and the other 5 exams. So the ISC section of the CPA exam is the Information Systems and Controls section of the CPA exam, and this is going to test your knowledge and your skills that the CPA must demonstrate with respect to the information systems, including the processing integrity, availability, security, and confidentiality and privacy of information within the IT system. So inherent in this and in the analysis of controls in each of these subjects is the awareness of the risks that the entity is intending to mitigate through the use of those controls. Now, the ISC section also tests the knowledge and skills that CPAs must demonstrate with respect to data management, data collection, storage, and use of data throughout the data life cycle. The ISC section of the CPA exam focuses on information technology, audit and advisory, including systems and organizations control, SOC engagements. With respect to SOC engagement, the ISC section primarily focuses on SOC 2 engagements, planning and certain procedures, SOC 1 engagements, and these assessments will also incorporate applied research with a focus on reviewing and using excerpts of source materials such as standards, regulations, and frameworks in order to complete a range of tasks, including identifying issues, analyzing facts, and determining appropriate responses. So the ISC section blueprints are organized by 3 different areas here. We have the content area, the content group, and the content topic. So basically for the content area, we have three different areas that we're going to be looking at. Area 1 is going to be information systems and data management. Area 2 is security, confidentiality, and privacy. And Area 3 is considerations for the system and organization controls, SOC engagements. And you can see here that there's a different allocation percentage for each of these three different areas, with Area 1 and Area 2 being 35 to 45% of the content that you will be seeing on the exam, and Area 3 with the SOC engagements is going to be 15 to 25% of the questions that you're going to be seeing on the exam. So taking a closer look at these different content areas, starting with Area 1, this is going to be focused on information systems and data management in the modern context. So it's going to include the following: IT architecture components and the use of cloud-based models for IT infrastructures, platforms, and services, enterprise and accounting information systems, system availability and IT change management, data collection, storage, and secured query language, integration of data from different data sources, and business process models. In Area 2 of the ISC section blueprint, this is going to cover security, confidentiality, and privacy. So this is going to be related to select portions of specified regulations, standards, and frameworks related to information security and privacy, types of threats and attacks that you could experience, controls the entity uses to prevent, detect, and respond to those types of threats and attacks, controls the entity uses to maintain the confidentiality and privacy of information, testing of an entity's internal controls over security, confidentiality, and privacy, and an entity's incident response plan. So Group A covers the foundational knowledge of certain regulations, standards, and frameworks related to security, while Group B covers security, and Group C covers confidentiality, privacy, and Group D covers incident response. Now, in Area 3 of the ISC exam, we have considerations for various SOC engagements. So here you're going to be tested on the form, content, and management assertions in SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3 reports, the purpose and intended users of SOC 1, 2, and 3 reports for cybersecurity reporting, aspects of engagement planning and reporting for SOC 1 and SOC 2 engagements, procedures related to complementary user entity controls and complementary subservice organization controls, and procedures related to the system description criteria for SOC 1 and SOC 2 engagements, as well as trust services criteria for SOC 2 engagements. So the CPA exam skill framework is based on something called Bloom's taxonomy. So what this basically means is that there's different skill levels that you're going to need to know in order to respond to the questions. You're going to start down here at the bottom, remembering and understanding. These are the easiest types of questions. Then you have application of knowledge, concepts, and techniques. These are going to be the next level. Then you have analysis and evaluation. So for the ISC exam, you're only going to have remembering, understanding, application, and analysis. So for remembering and understanding skills, these are going to be tested across all areas of the ISC exam. For the application skills, these are going to be tested again across all the areas of the ISC exam. And for the analytical, the analysis skills, these are going to be tested in Area 1 and Area 2 of the ISC exam, which we're going to go over now. So as a summary of what we just went over, here we have the content area allocation and the skill allocation. So again, we had Area 1, information system and data management. 35 to 45% of the weight of the exam is this. Security, confidentiality, and privacy, again, 35 to 45%. And content area 3, considerations for SOC engagements, 15 to 25%. And as far as the skill allocation goes, you are going to have 55 to 65% of the exam is going to be remembering and understanding problems. So remembering and understanding is the largest portion of the ISC exam. Application is going to be 20 to 30% of the exam, and analysis is going to be 10 to 20% of the questions that you're going to be seeing on the exam. So now getting into the details of each specific area of the ISC exam, we're going to start with Area 1, which is the Information Systems and Data Management section of the ISC exam, which is going to comprise 35 to 45% of the material that you're going to be seeing on the exam. And again, these areas are broken down by content group and topic and the skills that you're going to need to know for each individual representative task that you're going to be asked questions about. So you can see here that we have remembering and understanding, application, analysis, and there is no evaluation for the ISC exam. So you can see here for our first section, information systems related to IT infrastructure, that the majority of these questions are going to be related to remembering and understanding. So you're going to need to be able to explain the purpose and recognize examples of key components of the IT infrastructure. You're going to need to explain cloud computing, including cloud computing models. You're going to need to be able to summarize the role and responsibilities of cloud service providers and to explain how the Committee of Sponsored Organization frameworks address cloud computing governance. Next, we have enterprise and accounting information systems. Again, here you're going to have some areas where you're going to need to do remembering and understanding, some application, and some analysis in this area. So for the first part here, you're going to need to be able to summarize enterprise resource planning, ERP, and accounting information systems and what they encompass and how they interact. You'll need to be able to explain how the Committee of Sponsored Organizations internal control framework can be used to evaluate risk related to the use of blockchain. You're going to need to be able to determine the potential changes to business processes to improve the performance of an accounting information system. You're going to need to be able to reconcile the actual sequence of steps and the information, documents, tools, and technology used in key business processes, and to detect deficiencies in the suitability of the design and deviations in the operation of controls related to information systems processing integrity in SOC 2 engagements using the trust services criteria. Continuing with Area 1, we have availability, where you're going to need to recall the scope, purpose, and key considerations for business resiliency, disaster recovery, and business continuity plans. You're going to need to be able to explain the objectives of mirroring and replication. You're going to need to be able to summarize the steps in a business impact analysis. You're going to need to be able to recall the measures of a system availability. You're going to need to be able to determine the appropriateness of an organization's data backup types, including recovery considerations, and you're going to need to be able to detect deficiencies in the suitability and the design and deviations in operation of controls related to service organization availability. Next, we have change management, where you're going to need to be able to explain the purpose of change management related to internal hardware and software applications. You're going to need to be able to explain the different environments that are used in and test the types of tests performed. You're going to need to be able to explain the approaches that can be used when converting to new information systems. You're going to need to be able to explain the patch management. You're going to need to be able to test the design and implementation of change control policies. And you're going to need to be able to perform a walkthrough of an organization's change management procedures and compare the observed procedures with the documented policy requirements. The last part of Area 1 is data management. Well, you'll need to identify data extraction methods and techniques. You'll need to define the various types of data storage. You'll need to summarize the data life cycle. You'll need to be able to examine the relational databases structure to determine whether it applies data integrity rules, uses of data dictionary, and normalizes the data. You'll need to be able to examine the standard SQL query to determine whether its retrieved data set is relevant and complete. You'll need to be able to integrate the data available from different data sources to provide information necessary for financial and operational analysis and decisions. And you'll need to be able to investigate a business process model. Moving on to Area 2 of the ISC exam, this area is concerned with security, confidentiality, and privacy, and this again is going to make up 35 to 45% of the questions that you're going to be seeing on the exam. So starting with regulation standards and frameworks, here you're going to need to be able to recall the covered entities and permitted users and disclosures of HIPAA security privacy rules. You're going to need to be able to recall the scope of the GDPR and the 6 principles principles and key concepts for personal data, recall the requirements for PCI DSS, recall the 3 parts of the NIST CSF, 4 tiers organizational profiles. You're going to need to be able to recall the 3 parts of the NIST privacy framework, recall the purposes, applicability, target audience, and organizational responsibilities of NIST SP 800, and recall the overview of each CIS control, as well as recall the governance system principles, governance framework principles, and components of the governance system according to COBIT 2019. Next, we have security with threats and attacks. So here you're going to need to be able to classify the different types of threat agents. You're going to need to be able to identify the types of attacks and to identify the techniques used in cyber attacks, okay? Continuing on with security and threats and attacks, we have to be able to explain the stages in a cyber attack. You have to be able to identify the cybersecurity risks related to using cloud environments, platforms, and services, to identify the cybersecurity risks related to Internet of Things, identify the cybersecurity risks related to mobile technologies, explain threat modeling and the threat landscape, to be able to determine the specific cybersecurity threats in an organization's connections with customers, vendors, and partner organizations, and to be able to determine the specific cybersecurity threats to an organization's on-premises and cloud-based application networks. Next, we have mitigation, where you'll need to be able to identify the ways to protect a network and devices used to access networks remotely. You'll need to be able to recall the definition and purpose of vulnerability management, to explain the concepts of layered security and defenses in depth, to define the concepts of least privilege, zero trust, whistling, and the need to know principle, and to recall the purpose and content of technology applicable use policy, including considerations specific to mobile technologies. Continuing on with mitigation, we'll have to be able to explain how the Committee of Sponsored Organization frameworks can be used to assess cyber risks and controls, to determine the common preventative, detective, or corrective controls. You'll need to be able to determine the appropriate identification and authentication techniques and technologies, to determine the appropriate authorization models and controls. And next we have testing, where you'll need to be able to perform procedures to obtain an understanding of how an entity communicates information to improve security knowledge and awareness. You'll need to be able to provide input into a security assessment report by documenting the issues, findings, and recommendations identified while performing tests of controls. You'll need to be able to perform a walkthrough of an organization's procedures relevant to IT security, and you'll need to be able to detect deficiencies in the suitability of the design and deviations in the operations of controls related to a service organization's security service commitments and system requirements in a SOC 2 engagement using the trust services criteria. Next, we have confidentiality and privacy, where you'll need to explain the encryption fundamentals, techniques, and applications. You'll need to recall the differences between confidentiality and privacy. You'll need to identify the methods for protection of confidential data using the design, development, and testing and implementation of applications. You'll need to explain the data loss prevention. You'll need to be able to identify financial and operational implications of a data breach. You'll need to be able to determine the controls and data management practices to securely collect, process, and store, transmit, and delete confidential data or data subject to privacy regulations. You'll need to be able to detect deficiencies in the suitability of the design and deviations in the operations of controls, and you'll need to be able to perform a walkthrough of an organization's procedures relevant to confidentiality and privacy. Moving on to incident response, you'll need to be able to recall the differences between security, cybersecurity events, and incidents, to explain the use of insurance as to the mitigation strategy for the security incident or data breach. You'll need to be able to summarize the contents of commonly included incident response plans, and to perform procedures to test whether the entity responded to a cybersecurity incident in accordance with the incident response plan. Next, moving on to Area 3, we have considerations for the system and organization controls, SOC engagements. So this is going to comprise 15 to 25% of the questions that you're going to be seeing on the ISC exam. First, here we have considerations specific to planning and performing SOC engagements. So here you're going to need to be able to explain the purpose of trust services criteria and its organization. You'll need to be able to recall the types of subject matters a practitioner may be engaged to report on using the trust services criteria. You'll need to be able to identify management's assertions specific to different categories and types of SOC engagements, SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3 engagements. You'll need to be able to recall the purpose of intended users for SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3 engagements. You'll need to be able to summarize the independent considerations between the service auditor and the service organization and subservice organizations. You'll need to explain how materiality is determined and used in performing SOC engagements. You'll need to identify the risk assessment requirements for a service organization and the service auditor. You'll need to be able to summarize the criteria for a vendor to be considered a subservice organization. You'll need to be able to explain the considerations for deciding between and use of the inclusive and carve-out methods for subservice organizations, and you'll need to define service commitments and system requirements in a SOC 2 engagement and how they correspond to an entity's objectives referred to in the trust services criteria. Continuing on with Area 3, considerations specific to planning and performing SOC engagements, you'll need to be able to recall the impact of subsequently discovered facts on the SOC engagement, to explain the purpose and common sections of a system description subject to SOC 1 and SOC 2 engagements. You'll need to be able to explain the purpose of complementary user entity controls identified by the service organization management in their system description. You'll need to be able to recall the requirements about obtaining management's written representations in a SOC engagement. You'll need to be able to obtain an understanding of the system addressed by a SOC 2 engagement. You'll need to be able to perform procedures to obtain an understanding of how a service organization provides its personal and external users information on how to report failures, incidents, concerns, and other complaints. You'll need to be able to prepare a comparison of management system description to a suitable criteria in a SOC 1 engagement or to a description criteria in a SOC 2 engagement, and you'll need to be able to determine the effects of subsequent events in a SOC 1 or SOC 2 engagement. Lastly, we have the considerations specific to reporting on a SOC engagement. So here you'll need to be able to explain the effects of CUECs on the SOC reports, SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports, to summarize the carve-out versus the inclusive method of reporting for CSOCs, to be able to explain the types of opinions and report modifications when deficiencies have been identified, to prepare results of testing of controls to be included in SOC 2 reports of the test of controls, and to determine the appropriate form and content of a report on the examination of controls at a service organization for SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports. So that is it for the AICPA blueprints for the ISC exam section of the CPA exam. Hopefully you were able to identify the areas that you are familiar with and the ones that you need to work on or brush up on before you sit for the ISC exam. If you're interested in studying for the ISC exam, please visit us at breezycpa.com. Here we have a comprehensive course for the Information Systems and Controls section of the CPA exam, which follows the AICPA blueprints that we just went over. There's a study guide, a cram course, a test bank full of questions for you to answer. We cover all the sections in detail that we just went over with short video lessons that are comprehensive and cover all the areas that you're going to need to know for the ISC exam. So visit us at breezycpa.com if you're interested in that. Use promo code BREEZY20 to get 20% off your membership. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.